The Chicago Bears have a very big game coming up this weekend in Week 13 against the Detroit Lions, and whether they win or lose, there are going to be a lot of questions stemming both before and after the game. Today, we're going to do our best to answer some of those for you guys in our Week 13 installment of Fan Mail Friday. You guys submitted questions via Instagram and YouTube, and today we're here to answer them for you. So let's hop right into it. Welcome back to the channel, guys. As you can see, we've got the overlay change for Fan Mail Friday, so trying to make things look a little better around here, but welcome back, whether you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. 2020 coming to a close. It's been an incredible year for us, and we're going to keep covering this season for you, no matter how bad it might get. I am your host, Chris Malpe. To the right of me, I am joined by both of my co-hosts, Parth and Jaylen McClinton. Guys, how's it going? Happy Friday.
Doing pretty good. Just waiting for the day to end. I guess it's already 3:20, but just chilling. And yeah.
Same here. And just enjoying my Friday. Let's talk some Bears football.
Yeah. Let's hop right into it. So we've got 7 hand-selected questions from Instagram and YouTube today to answer about the Bears' game against the Lions. Some of them have to do with the rest of the season. Some of them obviously have to do with this game moving forward. So let's hop right into them. First question we've got, I'm pretty sure Parth and Jaylen, you guys will be able to see him on the screen. This first question comes from your boy Vince. He asks, on a grade scale, how do you think Mitchell Trubisky performs this weekend? I'll go first. I think probably a B or a B+. He's someone who has succeeded against the Lions in the past, and you would have to assume that the Lions are going to be very hurt, very down this weekend. They put Desmond Trufant on IR. Jeff Okudah, as of Friday afternoon, has been ruled out for this game. They've been allowing 275.1 passing yards per game to opposing quarterbacks. We saw Trubisky lead that miraculous comeback in Week 1 against them, where we were down 17 heading into the fourth quarter. But yeah, they've got Deshaun Hand, their defensive end, starting out. Danny Shelton also on IR, their starting defensive tackle. Both of those two being out more so helps the run game, but also prevents Detroit from getting better pass rush against a weak Bears' offensive line. But yeah, as I said, they've been allowing 275 passing yards per game. I'm not going to say my stat prediction for Trubisky right now because I know that's coming on later in the show. But I'd say Mitch this weekend, I'll probably end up giving him I would hope, a B+ on a grade scale. So Parth, I'm going to pass it to the middle to you now. What would you hope Mitchell Trubisky's grade scale performance this weekend ends up being?
I hope at least it's like a B+, like you said. This Lions team is depleted. Lots of injuries in the secondary. They've already been giving up a lot of yards even without injuries. So, we're playing their backups. And in the first game, we saw Trubisky be able to, in the fourth quarter, throw 3 touchdowns and lead the Bears to a comeback. So, he usually brings his A game against the Lions. So I expect him to have another good game against Lions. So I'm probably going to go with a B+ here.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, no Jeff Okudah, no Desmond Trufant. So, Jaylen, you already said it, but are we in agreement here?
Yeah, I'm going with a B+ as well. Mitchell has his ups and downs when he plays against the Lions, like every single time, except like one time back in 2018 where he had a perfect game the whole game. So I'm going to go with a B here. He might start off slow and just pick it up for the rest of the game, but I'm going to go with a B here as well.
Yeah. Heading into this next question, this is an interesting one. This one comes from Super Yoshiron _18. He says, if the Bears lose to the Lions, should they fire Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace? I think that should happen anyways if the team doesn't make the playoffs. No matter what happens this game, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs anyways. But if they lose this game, it surely won't help Pace and Nagy's cases. But I still don't think any moves are going to happen until after the season. It doesn't really make sense anyways if this team's not going to be competitive. We obviously see the Jets with Adam Gase. The 3 teams that have made a move this season, mid-season, are the Texans, the Lions, and the Falcons. And while they've had winning records with their interim head coaches, I hope that doesn't bode well for the Lions, but while they've had winning records with their interim head coaches, if the Bears do lose to the Lions, I would say the season's officially over. So it doesn't make sense to dump Pace or Nagy until after the season's over. But losing this one surely doesn't help their case, and I'm sure, just in general, if they don't make the playoffs, it doesn't really help their case whatsoever. So, Parth, I'm passing it to you. If the Bears lose to the Lions, does that boost your confidence rating that Pace and Nagy are gone after the season?
I'd hope they're gone after the game if they lose to the Lions, but we've seen McCaskey not fire any coaches so far during the season for as the Bears owner, so I doubt that happens. But we don't know how hot their actual seat is. Matt Nagy said he feels comfortable with where he's at, with his job. So maybe he's been hearing things from up top that your job is fine. You don't have to worry about 2021, and we don't know that. Well, we're making up all these situations, but if they do lose to the Lions this week, I at least hope one of them is gone next year.
Yeah, and we saw a report from Pro Football Network early on in the season when the Bears were doing better that Pace and Nagy were going to at least be here until the end of the 2020-2021 season, but we've seen some flurries throughout the year that Pace has endeared himself to the McCaskey family, so he's fine, but Nagy's on the hot seat, and we've also seen stuff where they both might go because apparently the McCaskey family is enraged with the state of the team. So we'll really see. I do know that throughout time, the McCaskey family is 3 for 3 in firing coaches when they lose 5 straight games in the middle of the season when they're with a winning record. Kudos to Zach Rimbos, our video editor, for that. He posted on Instagram a couple of days ago. So that doesn't bode too well considering the Bears have lost 5 in a row, but I don't think the change happens midseason. So, Jaylen, you've been one generally, I feel like, to support Nagy and Pace a little bit more than Parth and I in the past. So if they lose this one, what do you think? How do you think it affects their case for keeping or losing their jobs next offseason?
It definitely doesn't help their case at all. They're already on a 5-game losing streak, and if we lose this game to a team that's already depleted without their best receiver, 2 of their top corners, they just fired their head coach, last week. So this is not going to be, this is not going to help their resume at all if they want to stay the head coach and GM of this team. So, personally, like I said, I'm not a fan of firing Pace and Nagy after this year, unless we completely lose out and go 5-11. But definitely after this game, I will start to change my mind if we lose to this Lions team, because I feel like we could have beat a lot of these teams that we played so far, that we lost to on this 5-game losing streak. But this team is not one of them that we should lose to. We're a better team than this one, even with a depleted offensive line and the injuries that we're facing right now in bad quarterback play.
I mean, I would probably still be decently confident if the Lions had all their pieces. The Bears aren't going to play Kenny Golladay at all in 2020. He's missing his 5th straight game here. They're missing Jeff Okudah again, who had struggled earlier on in the season, and I'm sure would struggle against Allen Robinson a decent bit. But he's going to be out as well. Trufant out, 2 big pieces of the defensive line outs. DeAndre Swift hasn't practiced in 2 days with an illness, so if he goes, he might be a little rusty, but we shall see. I surely hope the Bears would win this one, and obviously we'll get to our picks tomorrow in our pregame show. But heading on to another question. Before we get into more questions about the game, we're going to go one more about the season. If we lose this, the season officially over? I'll start first. Yes, it is. The only way the Bears' season isn't over in my mind is if they win out. Sure, they could be 9-7, and that would be great, but they don't have a tiebreaker, I believe, against the Cardinals because they beat the Rams. They don't have the tiebreaker against the Rams themselves. I'm not sure how the 49ers play into there, and there's some other teams around there, including the Minnesota Vikings, that could finish around the same spot. That I think if the Bears lose once more, it really doesn't matter too. If it's in Week 17 versus Green Bay, or if it's next week versus the Houston Texans, or this week versus the Detroit Lions, I do believe the season's over. So, Parth, if we lose this week or any other week of the season, can we call it quits?
Yeah, I think we can. I've officially already called it quits, like in my own head, but a lot of Bears fans are still holding on to that last piece of hope. But I doubt we actually finish the season with a 5-0 record. It's really hard, especially when you're on a 5-game losing streak right now.
I mean, that would be quite the up and down for the season.
Yeah.
If you take a look at the Bears' next 4, I mean, you got another matchup with Minnesota where a lot of things could be corrected. Even though Kirk Cousins has been playing better this season, I'll give him that. You've got a Jacksonville team that's in dismay. They haven't been playing great at all. And you've also got the Houston Texans who, while they have been playing better, their season is most definitely over. And then also the Detroit Lions, who just fired their head coach and seems like they're going to be heading into a hard reboot soon. So, you got 4 or 5 that are pretty winnable, and then you've got Green Bay, which I assume would be the nail in the coffin, unless they clinch a playoff spot and they start Jordan Love. So I guess hypothetically maybe win 2 of these and I could get myself invested again somehow. But if the Bears lose a game, I think the season's definitely over. So, Jaylen, I'm going to pass it back around to you. If the Bears lose one more this season, if they lose one against Detroit this weekend, is the season over?
Yeah, definitely. at 5-7. We still could potentially win out and go 9-7, but I don't think that gets us into the playoffs, even with the 7 playoff seeds. Unless it's 8, possibly that could, but no.
I think you got to get to 10 if you want to make it.
Yeah. So that's why I still have a little optimism that we can still make the playoffs. But if we lose this game, the season is definitely going to be over. We're probably going to continue to play Mitch and just look for next season and look towards the draft.
All right. Well, let's head into another question about Trubisky. I spoke about his stat line earlier. This one comes from Osmank004. He asks, what do you guys think Trubisky's stat line will look like? I'll probably go the Detroit's allowing 275 passing yards per game. I'll go a little bit under that. I'll probably go 260 passing yards. Let's go 3 touchdowns and 1 interception. Maybe 2 interceptions, but I'll be a little nicer to Mitch, and he's played well against the Lions in the past. So I'm going to go 260 passing yards. I can't give you a prediction for rushing yards, but 3 total touchdowns, maybe 1 on the ground, as well as an interception. So, Parth, I'm going to pass it along to you now. How do you think Mitch does in this one?
I'm going to go, let's say, 240 passing yards, touchdown passing, touchdown rushing, and then an interception.
Okay, so you've got 240, 2 touchdowns and an interception. Jaylen, circling back around to you now, what's your prediction for how 10 does in this one?
Well, since 10 isn't like really averages 3 touchdowns a game, and they're already down two pieces on their secondary, I'm going to go 250 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and a W for Mitchell Trubisky.
I'd be nice. I'll mention Will on this because the last time our contributor Will Pembroke wrote is when the Bears beat the Panthers. He hasn't written until this week. He got busy with schoolwork, and the Bears have lost every time since he's written. So, maybe him coming back will boost the Bears over the top here. Maybe it's just a stigma thing. So
hopefully, shout out Pembroke.
Yes, shout out Pembroke for sure. He's a legend. A lot of people here working hard behind the scenes. But heading into our next question, and he answered a ton of these on social media. So you can go over to our website. We'll talk about it later in the episode and check out what he had to answer to some of these questions. But this next question comes from Andrew Villarule. He says, should the Bears give Riley more chances? I don't even think that's a question at this point. I think Javon Wims is a healthy scratch for the rest of the season. Probably gets cut after the season, if I'm being completely honest. And I do think Riley gets more chances. Obviously, we've seen Darnell Mooney exceed expectations. We've seen Anthony Miller like tweets about going other places, as well as Javon Wims. So who knows what's happened with them in the upcoming offseason. Both of those players have been pretty inconsistent, and Ridley hasn't gotten a fair share ever since he's arrived in Chicago. I believe a 4th-round pick the year David Montgomery was selected. So I would love to see Ridley get more chances. I think he's going to be on the active roster for the rest of the season over Wims. We've seen him have I think 2 or 3 catches since he's joined the team. So, Parth, I'm passing it to you now. You've been a big Ridley guy for a while. We haven't seen him put up much production at all ever since he's come to Chicago. But with Javon Wims out now and that whole situation looming, do you think Ridley deserves a lot more shots?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's an obvious answer. With Mooney questionable for the game, actually. So is Allen Robinson. I think Ridley gets more chances regardless of what the personnel is out there. I think he's going to be involved more in the offense next couple of weeks of the season. He's got a lot to prove to other teams as well. He might be fighting for a contract for his next team, but I think he has potential that the Bears can maybe discover in the last couple games of the season.
Yeah, tapping into it would be nice, and Ridley's actually put together 2 decent games, I would say. Mm-hmm. He had an 18-yard catch against the Tennessee Titans on a 3rd and 16. We all remember that at the end of the game when the Bears were fighting back. 2 catches for 23 yards in that game. Didn't do anything in the Minnesota game, but he had 2 receptions for 16 yards against Green Bay. And throughout his career in Chicago, he only has 10 receptions for 108 yards, 10.8 yards per catch. A long catch of 32 that came against Minnesota in 2019 and 0 touchdowns. So we didn't see anything from him in 2018 either. But Jaylen, you've also been someone to speak highly of Wims, but not only Wims, you've also been a Ridley fan throughout your time. Seems like Wims might be done for the season as some discipline for what happened, obviously, a couple of weeks ago against the New Orleans Saints. So do you think Ridley gets more chances moving forward?
I definitely feel like Ridley deserves more chances. Like you said, he's probably going to be active over Javon Wims for the remainder of the season, due to, the stuff against the Saints. So I definitely feel like he deserves more chances. He showed some flashes this season. And he showed some flashes in his rookie season as well, but he definitely earned the opportunity to at least get a opportunity to show that he can play for us.
Yeah, I definitely think he deserves it moving forward, and I definitely think he'll be able to get more chances moving forward. So heading into the next question, and this one's probably one of the most pressing questions all season, and we haven't really gotten around to it. I'm sure probably if he doesn't do anything this weekend, we'll make a video about it next week. But this question is, will Robert Quinn wake up this week? It comes from Trevor Paluski. We take a look at Robert Quinn this year. He's got 13 tackles, I believe 2 sacks and 2 forced fumbles. The only category I'd really give him credit in is the forced fumbles category. He had 1 against the Giants, also 1 at the end of the Rams game that Eddie Jackson returned for a touchdown. But the answer to this question is, unfortunately, probably not. Quinn hasn't produced much at all this year. There are several reasons for that. He's no spring chicken. He's old and past his prime, and this, unfortunately, seems to be the year where he takes a step back, and the whole defense in general doesn't seem too motivated to play. So I'm not too confident that Robert Quinn's going to show up anytime. The unfortunate part of his deal, we can get out of it after 2021, not so much after 2020. But if you actually look at his deal, he's only getting paid $6 million this year. He's getting so much more money in 2021 and 2022 if we end up keeping him. It's a very front-loaded deal that puts the money in the back end, or excuse me, a back-loaded deal that puts the money in the back end. So I guess the only nice thing about that is he's not getting paid a ton to be able to show this little of production. But I've still been quite disappointed by him, especially you see Leonard Floyd has like 8 or 9 sacks with the Rams right now. Of course he does. I mean, I don't like to dwell in the past, but we saw that experiment didn't work out too well in Chicago. But I don't think Robert Quinn wakes up this week. He's been decent in some situations. He's made some big tackles in some of these games, but it's been quite the disappointment watching him all season. So Parth, do you think Robert Quinn has any sort of resurgence against the Lions?
I'm not going to hope for anything. He's been struggling all year, only a sack on the year, which is pretty much terrible. I mean, considering what we're paying him in 2019, he had 11.5 sacks this year with Chicago. He only has 1 sack. I think a lot of it also falls on our scheming. He's been playing 4-3 almost his whole entire career. And whenever he's been playing on a 3-4 defense, his numbers have taken a toll. He doesn't get as many sacks. So, Chuck Pagano's 3-4 defense, it's a switch up from Dallas's 4-3. And I think that explains why his sack numbers have fallen. I think that's something we talked about earlier in the year when we recorded, I think, when we signed him, too. I don't know if you remember that, Chris.
Yeah, a long time ago. Quarantine was too long for me. But, Jaylen, we've only seen 2 sacks, 2 forced fumbles from Robert Quinn this year. Do you think with the amount he's getting paid, he adds anything to those numbers this weekend against the Lions?
I'm gonna go with you guys. I'm not looking forward to it, or I'm not gonna expect him to show up this week because I expect him to show up week 3 after he the first play of his against his Bears debut. It was a strip sack on Daniel Jones that we recovered and got points out of. So basically after that we haven't seen much of Robert Quinn. I guess a forced fumble versus the LA Rams to get a touchdown on the board because the offense wasn't going to do it. So I'm not going to expect nothing out of Robert Quinn. It's week 13. He hasn't done nothing since week 2. So I'm not expecting much.
Yeah, neither am I, unfortunately. But it would be nice if he showed up this week. We thought earlier this week that we weren't going to see Khalil Mack on the injury report, but he did end up showing up with a back injury, and I'm sure Mack will play. He's played when he's been listed as questionable multiple times throughout this season. But it would be nice to see Robert Quinn step up in this one because we definitely need to get some more pressure. Parth mentioned that the scheming's been weird a lot last week, dropping everyone but 3 in the coverage. And that definitely falls on Chuck Pagano. But the scheming defensively has been weird this season, and it hasn't played in Robert Quinn's favor at all. So finally, we've got one more question to answer before we close this one off. This comes from Low Ma02. He says, will David Montgomery find pay dirt this weekend? I actually believe he will. I think David Montgomery will score a touchdown this weekend. We saw David Montgomery break out his longest run as a career in his career as a Bear last week against Green Bay, a 57-yarder. I really like what the Bears are doing within the interior offensive linemen that they have right now. It'll be nice once they have James Daniels back next year, but moving forward, I like Sam Mustipher at center. I'm perfectly cool with that. I think he's been really good throughout the season, and they moved Cody Whitehair over to guard, his natural position. Cody Whitehair's play has definitely dropped off more so this season, but it hasn't been as noticeable, and we saw Mustipher and Whitehair open up a great hole for Montgomery in that first play against Green Bay, where he took it all the way down to the Green Bay 8. So I do think David Montgomery has another solid week. He had 13 carries for 64 yards, 4.9 yards per carry in week 1 against the Detroit Lions. And obviously, we see 2 starting defensive linemen, Danny Shelton, the most important one, out for the Lions this weekend. So I definitely think it's a good week for David Montgomery, and I hope that O-line continues to prosper because I've criticized it all year, but I do like what they did to it this week. So, Parth, I'm going to pass it back around to you. We saw David Montgomery break out the longest Bears run since Halloween 2016 when Jordan Howard had a 69-yarder against the Vikings last week against the Packers with a 57-yarder. So do you think he scores this weekend?
Yeah, I think so, honestly. Montgomery's been playing a lot better recently. So is his offensive line, like you said, with Sam Mustipher up there with Whitehair. I think those two have been done a really good job in the interior part of the offensive line. And I think Montgomery has another great game against this Lions defense, which is definitely not one of the best out there. So,
yeah, and they've been allowing 133 rushing yards per game to opposing running backs. We've seen a good year for Montgomery. I will say one place where he has improved is his yards per carry. He's always one of the top players in the league in breaking tackles. We know him for being able to do that, and the amount of times he has to do that with this offensive line is tough. So he's got 4 yards per carry. I don't essentially think that's terrible. I think it could be a little bit better if he wants to raise his play, but he's only got 1 touchdown on the season, but he's also been pretty good in the receiving game. 35 receptions for him. He's got 575 total yards on the ground. I'm not sure how many all-purpose yards, but Jaylen, do you think we see David Montgomery find pay dirt this weekend?
I've never heard anybody refer to a touchdown as that. So, when I first saw that question, I was like, what is that? But, yeah, I definitely feel like he scores, or I feel like he can have a big game against the Lions. He had a decent game week 1 against them. That gave us hope that we were going to have a running game or a decent run attack to take some pressure off their QBs. But obviously that was just false hope. And basically after that, we didn't see a run game up until last week, I feel like. So, yeah, I definitely feel like he can have a big game, especially with Danny Shelton, who's their nose tackle and who's a great run defender. David's had a very good game last week, coming off his concussion, and I feel like he can keep that up against this Lions defense.
Yeah, 103 rushing yards for Montgomery last week, so it would be nice for him to keep that up. Obviously, we all know how good he would probably be with a good offensive line, and we're going to have to wait for 2021 to see if he can improve. But thank you guys so much for listening in to our Week 13 episode of Fan Mail Friday. We've got one more podcast coming to you guys. We've got obviously our pregame show coming out tomorrow on Saturday, and then we will live stream the game on Sunday and obviously put up our postgame show, our initial reactions and thoughts after the game. So if you guys want more content from us, head over to our website, beardown.com. I mentioned it earlier. Will Pembroke, who writes for us, he was on the website. He answered a couple other of your guys' questions before the Bears game. So do us a favor. If you have some extra time, go over, check out our website. We're posting a ton of Week 13 coverage. And if you did ask us a question, it could be in that article. So be sure to check out for that. If you guys want to follow us on social media, you can find the podcast on Instagram and Twitter at Bear Down. We're doing our Christmas giveaway very soon. We want to give back to you guys as much as possible. So we're going to be doing that in a couple of weeks, giving away a couple of Christmas-themed items, Bears items to you guys. So be sure to look out for that. Free to enter giveaways. We're going to announce them on our social media. And finally, you can find all of our social media down in the description as well, our Instagram and Twitter pages. It's a great way to interact with us. We're active on all of the platforms, and it's just a great follow. So be sure to check those out. Parshaw, Jaylen McClinton, the weekend coming to a close, or I guess just starting, but with how fast things move, definitely coming to a close soon. Any last words before we close this one out?
I don't know what I got for you guys, but like Chris said, just follow us on Twitter. I've been active on Twitter almost.
We've been good on Twitter this year. We hopped on Twitter for the first time this year. It's been a lot of fun. So
it's been fun. It's been growing pretty slowly, but I've been enjoying the ride. So yeah, if you guys are on Twitter, make sure to drop all 3 of us a follow. I think we're all pretty good follows.
Yeah, definitely for me because I don't post on Instagram anymore. I don't even look at Instagram. But other than that, bear down and tune into the stream on Sunday. That's about it.
Yeah, the stream will be fun. Hopefully tomorrow for the pregame show, I'm not too woozy. I have to go get a procedure done on my back tomorrow morning. I have a herniated disc, so I will be getting injections and I will be getting sedated. So hopefully I'll be good to record the pregame show unless we're doing it early. But that should be interesting. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the stream on Sunday. Hopefully the Bears can bounce back. That would make quite the good weekend, especially if my Iowa Hawkeyes win, if Indiana can find a way to win. Actually, no, I think Indiana, they're going to get canceled.
No, we are playing against Wisconsin.
Minnesota Northwestern got canceled. But yeah, it could be a good weekend if the Bears win because I'm getting too used to them losing, and that's never a good feeling. So once again, guys, it's been a pleasure to be your host once again. My name is Chris Malpe. Bears fans, be sure to look out for our pregame show coming out tomorrow. We also do have a special mixtape coming out tomorrow night on YouTube. But as always, do us a favor and stay safe in Bear Down. We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.